everybody, and welcome to the 14th part of my C++ beginner tutorials. Today we're going to be covering the most important topic that we've covered so far, and that's arrays. You will be using these all the time once you start programming. Arrays are, in my honest opinion, one of the most useful parts of C++. And several other programming languages have very similar things to arrays as well. And what they do is they allow us to store a group of numbers in one variable. So a bunch of number in one variable. Now let's go back to our old examples of like entering grades into a grade book, right? Now what we can do here is we can actually create an integer variable, and let's create a float variable, and let's call it grades. Okay, now what's going to happen is we can actually say grades 1, grades 2, grades 3, all the way up to however many grades that we need to enter into the grade book. Well, that's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. So the easiest way to do this is to just create an array for that. And you do that by using opening and closing brackets, and then in the brackets it takes one argument, and that is how big the array is. That's how many numbers do you want the array to hold. Well, let's say we have 50 students in the class, so they have 50 grades. Okay, pretty simple. So what we can do here is we can close it off there, and now we have a float array with 50 values that we can put in there. Now, how do we access these values? How do we assign them to something or read from them? Well, to assign them something, there's two ways that we can do that. We can either say equals and then use an open and closing brace and then just start manually typing the grades, such as 100, 50, all the way up until you reach 50 grades in there. Or we can say grades, opening and closing brackets, and then you want to access the array number in there. Now the way computers work is when they count, they don't count like humans. They don't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They actually count they start off at 0. So they count from 0. They say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they count up that way. So the first element of the array is going to be 0. So now we just need to make it equal something. So we can make it equal 10, right? And it's as simple as that. And if we want to later grab that, we can say cout, and we can say grades 0, and that would print the 0 part of the grades. So if we hit F4 here, or sorry, F5, it'll open our program and it'll say 10, press any key to continue. And the reason is I didn't use an end line there. So that's how we access arrays, and that's how we create arrays. Now, I want to kind of give a more practical example of arrays, and we can do that with a for loop. And that's why I wanted to teach random, is because initially when I went to create this tutorial, I wanted to do this, but then I was like, wait a second, I'm gonna have to sit here and manually type out 50 parts of an array. I really don't want to do that. Well, with random we don't have to. So if I create for, and I want to say for I equals int I is equal to 0, then int is less than 50. So if int is less than 50, continue. Now keep in mind that you can't do less than or equal to 50 because the array ends at 49, because computers count from 0. So there's 50 elements in the array, 0 through 49, and if I went less than or equal to 50, then it won't have anywhere to store it into the array because there is no 51 slot in the array. So we have to do less than 50. And then I'm going to increment by plus plus, right? So what I'm going to do here is we're going to say grades I. So we're going to use that variable. Remember, it starts off at 0, so we're just going to say grades 0, and then it'll increment by 1. We'll say grades 1, and so on and so forth. And actually, don't we mess that up? There we go. And then we'll set this equal to, and let's actually seed a random number in here. So let's say srand and we'll just say time 0. Okay, simple enough. We'll seed the random number, and we'll create we'll set this to a random number. Okay, well now what this is going to do is it's going to run through the code until it can fill up the array with a bunch of random numbers from 0 to 100 is what we would like. So we can just use a modulus, again, modulus, and just say 100. Simple as that, right? So it'll give us a value from 0 to 100. Well, now we want to say print these to the screen. So let's say cout. Let's make another for loop for this as well. So we'll say for int I equals 0. We'll say I is less than 50. Now say that we want to change the number of students. A student joins the class. Well, whoever was using this program would have to go into the source code and change all of the students. Well, what we can do here is we can actually create an integer variable, and we can call it students, and then say how many students are in here. So we can set this equal to 50, and then we can actually call students here. So now the array is the size of students, and then we could say if it's less than students. It should work. Okay, so we need to do something that I haven't covered yet, and that's create a constant int. A constant, what that means is it can't change like a normal variable. You can't just change it within the code. It's constant to what it was originally set at. So we create a constant int there, and then we can actually say students here. So then here we can say less than students as well. And this says identifier student is undefined, but it is set. What are you talking about, students? Oh, students. There, students. Okay. So now it's going to say if I is less than the number of students, then we'll continue to run. We'll do I++, and then we'll say, hey, for each of these, we're going to print out to the console. And I'm going to say, we're going to print grades I and L. That's it. So what happens when we print this? Well, it's going to generate 50 random numbers and print them all to the screen from our array. Awesome. How cool is that, right? Now you will notice that that's pretty cool, but I do want to cover multi-dimensional arrays as well, and that's going to be a whole nother episode. It's really cool, but what happens if a student has more than one grade? For instance, different subjects. What if they have a science grade and a math grade and an English grade? Well, that's going to require a multi-dimensional array. Now, we're going to cover multi-dimensional arrays next episode because we're already running at 8 minutes here, and I would like to give that the time it deserves. So that's how we can create arrays. That's how you can assign stuff to arrays, read from arrays, and just in general, all kinds of array stuff. And again, one of the most useful things that you will ever learn for C++, you will use arrays constantly. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.